already have a few teams booking their spot in the second round of the NBA playoffs. Hi, I'm Sebastian Fonseca. This is Spectator Sports. Please do us a massive favor. If you guys are new to Spectator Sports, to help us grow, we need you to help us out. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. For clips from this episode, you can get them on TikTok and Instagram, as well here on YouTube. You can get the entire audio from this podcast on Spotify, and all links are in the description. The Denver Nuggets got past the LA Lakers after the Lakers staved off elimination in Game 4, preventing a sweep and snapping their 11-game skid against the Denver Nuggets. But that temporary happiness was quickly extinguished on Monday night against the Denver Nuggets for Game 5. Again, in typical fashion of this series, we've seen the Lakers go up at halftime, even taking leads as much as 7 to 8 points. But the Nuggets chip away throughout the third quarter into the fourth quarter and eventually either take over or crush their hearts. And it happened in the latter form. Once again, just like in Game 2, Jamal Murray had a game-winning shot in the waning seconds. Not a buzzer beater, but with 3.6 seconds remaining. Despite him having a calf injury, and we also saw that KCP got a little banged up with his ankle, this couldn't come at perfect time for the Nuggets because now they get a few more days to rest up for their upcoming series against the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Nuggets are just that type of team that have had the Lakers number throughout this last 2-3 seasons. Nikola Jokic didn't even play his best, but still was a master orchestrator, and Jamal Murray wasn't the most potent at time, or at least the most efficient in this series, but in the fourth quarter in Game 2, and then we saw this again, despite the calf injury, he was very good overall and is truly the Denver Nuggets closer when it comes to it. In their classic two-man action, Jamal Murray gets it at the top of the key, Nikola Jokic sets a pick, gets AD to freeze a little bit because he knows he can't sag and stay at home to contest the shot because Jamal Murray could just dump it off for a pocket pass to Nikola Jokic for an easy jump shot in the lane or get to the paint for a layup. Then you saw Taurean Prince push Rui Hachimura, knowing that the play was going to happen, but it was too little too late. Even a decent contest from Austin Reeves just wasn't enough because he got a little dinged up from the hard screen from Nikola Jokic. Jamal Murray swishes it through the basket, and they go up 2. Lakers don't even have a timeout in the situation, and they have to use a desperation heave. Clanks off the rim, and the Nuggets are through to the second round of the NBA playoffs yet again. The Lakers are going to face a deep and truly transitional offseason this upcoming year in the summer 2024. We don't know about LeBron and what his status will be coming forward. He can opt out and leave the Lakers entirely. That is pretty far-fetched still at this moment in time, but definitely seems that the Lakers' championship hopes have been thoroughly extinguished after this latest run and the first round exit. They have a lot of pieces that they can either mix and match, they can retool, but again, it doesn't seem that they have enough to compete with the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Dallas Mavericks, and especially the Denver Nuggets. If they even were to find a new superstar to join them like Trae Young or another talented guard, I still don't think that is enough to propel them because at the end of the day, Denver is head and shoulders above the rest of the teams in the West, and we'll see how they navigate this postseason. But especially against the Lakers, they truly do have the Lakers number, and it will probably remain like that no matter what happens going forward. Early thoughts about this matchup with the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Denver Nuggets. Certainly exciting. Last year, these two teams went head-to-head, and despite them getting by the Minnesota Timberwolves in 5 games, the Nuggets still had their work cut out for them, and this year, this Minnesota Timberwolves team is a lot better than what they were in seasons past. They are fully healthy. They have Jaden McDaniels, their top wing defender. Anthony Edwards is another year wiser, more experienced, especially in the postseason, fresh off his first postseason victory. And you also have Cat back into the lineup after getting his feet wet in that first round series. And Rudy Gobert is arguably the defensive player of the year. Now, certainly the Nuggets have had their number in the past. They even though in recent matchups it's been fairly even. I do still trust the Nuggets because they have been there, they've done that, they have been in more pivotal moments in the postseason, and with all these battle wounds and scars that they have been able to sustain, they definitely have that experience, and that may be where the Timberwolves do fall to the Nuggets. It's going to be a very long series. I think it's going to be truly a street fight. It could go the distance and be a 7-game series, but I think early on I'm going to pick the Nuggets in 7 games to get by the Minnesota Timberwolves and get back to the conference finals. This is another virtuoso performance, and only adding on to the budding legend that is Jalen Brunson in New York. In terms of small-time guards that are 6'1" and under, it's already becoming a known fact that Jalen Brunson is amongst the best ever in NBA history. You think about Isaiah Thomas, you think about Allen Iverson of recent memory, and Jalen Brunson has taken their games and added it to another tier. You think about the perimeter game, the ability to shake and bake and get to the foul line on a consistent basis. He is probably a better scorer than Isaiah Thomas is, and probably a little bit better passer than Allen Iverson was. Maybe not your true point guard just like Chris Paul is, but he has a lot of combo guard capabilities, and he's only starting to scratch the surface of what could be an all-time great career in terms of small guards. The Mavs and Clippers are tied 2 games apiece heading to Game 5 in a pivotal matchup where that could determine who wins this series. Dating back to Game 3, the Mavs took control as Kawhi just didn't look like himself. 4-7, not a bad shooting night by any means, but only 9 points. Paul George struggled, and Russell Westbrook got ejected for a skirmish with PJ Washington. And when those 3 aren't really getting going and it's just James Harden, it was clear that the matchup was going to favor the Dallas Mavericks. They won that game with plenty of room to spare, took a 2-1 series lead, and had an opportunity to get this on the brink to the second round, but they started off very poorly. And another adjustment that we saw is that Kawhi sat out with continuing knee inflammation, and it just doesn't seem that Kawhi is truly healthy. He may even sit out for Game 5, we don't know, but clearly he's just not right. The fact is that they're just better without him for the time being. They play faster, they don't defer to him. Paul George just feels more comfortable. James Harden can take on a little bit more of that scoring punch and be a little bit more aggressive, because in Game 4, both of those guys were pivotal and crucial to them building a 31-point halftime lead. Paul George was the guy to get it started, and then James Harden stopped the bleeding after the Kyrie flurry in the third quarter, and Luka, helping out with 29 points, was able to give them the lead late, but they kind of burned out and ran out of gas as James Harden was able to get a few floaters in the lane to give them the lead for good, and the Clippers get back to LA tied 2-2 and making this a best out of 3. It's definitely something to keep an eye out because Luka Doncic just doesn't seem totally consistent in terms of efficiency. He has been relatively off for much of this series, and I think it's safe to say that Kyrie has been their best player in this series. Definitely something to keep an eye out for. I feel like this was the best performance we've seen out of Kyrie since his Cavalier days, and that's been 7 years since he's been traded from the Cleveland Cavaliers. Kyrie is certainly finding the range, and they just need to get a little bit of help. They need Luka to be Luka, and I think turnovers have been an issue. He's been a little pouty with getting calls at the rim when he makes drives to the basket, and certainly something to keep an eye out for, because when he's been playing the Clippers, Zubac kind of gets caught in the no man's land, but somehow he's definitely picking up, not really biting on pump fakes or crossovers even, and can guard Luka on the perimeter. We know that Luka's dealing with a little bit of a knee injury, and that may have a factor into it, but let's give Ivica Zubac some credit here for defending Luka in smaller spurts. I'm still going to pick the Mavericks to win this series in 6 games. I just think they still have the better team, and it's still not sustainable for the Clippers to win a series without Kawhi Leonard. I think they still need a healthy Kawhi Leonard to win this series and be true Western Conference contenders, but it's still something. It's truly going to determine who wins this series. And whoever wins Game 5, I feel, is going to truly win this series, and we'll see what happens on Wednesday night. The Minnesota Timberwolves have won their first postseason series in 20 years. They swept the Phoenix Suns, and they put this team that was so dependent on iso ball finally out of their misery. Despite Devin Booker putting up 49 points and Kevin Durant having 33 points, Bradley Beal has been somewhat of the weakest link out of this big three, especially as the series went back to Phoenix. Very pedestrian performances. I don't know whether there's an injury, but there's no really excuse there. Just did not play that well. I just didn't think that they would go out this sadly. I knew that it was a stretch for them to win this series because the Suns are so dependent on this top-heavy roster. Unless all three dudes fire on all cylinders, it's going to be a very tough out. And now with Grayson Allen tweaking his ankle in Game 2, he didn't return for the rest of the series. They added on more pressure to this big three, and when you see one guy maybe perform at above 30-point clip, the other two guys are just not up to their par, not up to their standards that they should be giving to the Phoenix Sun team. And you saw it on a consistent basis. You saw with this team that they just lacked something. They just lacked a bench. They lacked size. And Frank Vogel was clamoring at the Suns front office, get me a point guard, get somebody to orchestrate this offense. But he is probably going to be a scapegoat in this. I know defensively they've been kind of lackluster, especially with this Wolves matchup, but how can you blame them? They don't have a lot of bodies. They don't have a true defensive stopper on the wing or in the paint. Jusuf Nurkic isn't a well-known defender in this league. So he may get the axe for that. He may get fired. It's probably a foregone conclusion. But the Phoenix Suns have a big offseason now. They can't really do much, and they may have to end up just saying, screw it, it's not going to work out. And that may mean that Devin Booker is the only viable option to trade for and get rid of, to get some younger pieces, get some draft capital back to either get them to contend for postseason contention, maybe adjust their hopes. And that might be something, because we know now that Kevin Durant isn't going to be the go-to player on a championship caliber team. Kevin Durant made a bunch of moves after leaving the Golden State Warriors for his big three in Brooklyn. Didn't work out there. Left Brooklyn for Phoenix, created another big three after shipping out Chris Paul and getting Bradley Beal. I understand he is a hooper. He doesn't want to be a leader, but he's certainly not an expert at roster construction, that's for sure. Since leaving the Golden State Warriors and relying on guys that are more ISO players and basically taking turns, your turn, my turn, whether it was with Kyrie, James Harden, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, or Bradley Beal, none of those really seemed to work. Didn't get past the second round in any one of those playoff campaigns and suffered 2 first-round sweeps. Kevin Durant also just doesn't seem like himself. I know he's coming off the Achilles injury from 5 years ago, and that does add up after several years. And after 3 injury-plagued campaigns, this was his first true year that he played on a consistent basis. He played 75 games. That was the most amount of games he played since 2019. But you can also see that his game has kind of deteriorated. He doesn't have the explosion to drive and make cuts to the rim. He doesn't have the explosion to make contested shots elevate. He settles for mid-range jump shots after a couple of crossovers, sizing up a defender and just using his length. That is truly an unblockable shot. It's just fate at that point. Either it hits the rim or it goes through the net. We don't know. His three-pointers go down. His three-point attempts are down, and the amounts of shots in the paint have gone down. The free throw attempts are down. Yes, he can get you 27 points, but it's definitely not the most efficient way, because we know the mid-range shot is truly a relic in the modern NBA. It doesn't really translate to success anymore. The three-point shot and points in the paint are the most efficient shots, and it's better to pass and get a shot either closer to rim or even jack up a three than settle for a mid-range jumper. But Kevin Durant is set in his ways, and he's big on getting guys that kind of fit in that way, because when he was with Golden State, he wasn't a big fan of the side-to-side action. He was clamoring at Steve Kerr to get more isolation pace, and that almost was to their detriment in 2018 when they were going with too many Kevin Durant isolation plays and they trailed 3-2, and it wasn't thanks to Chris Paul's injury in Game 5. Who knows what would have happened in that series, but that saved him. He got another championship, and the rest is history. But we know that since then it's been a disappointment in the NBA. It's just going out sad at this point. I don't know if he's going to stick around in Phoenix or he may demand a trade or leave at a different point. But he is going to be 36 entering training camp this fall. And we don't know how many more years of Kevin Durant we may have left. He may have 2-3 decent years before he hangs it up. But I don't think he's going to win a championship, and he's going to be just those asterisk rings where he had the deck heavily stacked in his favor, and there wasn't really a lot of resistance, and he won those rings without any true competition. So that's it for this episode of Spectator Sports. You guys know what to do. If you want to help us grow, like this video, subscribe to the channel. If you want to get clips from this episode, they're here on YouTube in our playlist or on TikTok and Instagram. You can get the entire audio from this podcast on Spotify. Thank you, Joy, for editing this podcast, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take care.